Welcome back. How was lunch? Decent? Good? All right. So one of my favorite sessions at every Adept experience is this customer panel. And first, a big thank you for all these guys for making their way up here and being willing to share and take some heat and some abuse probably, we'll see. All right, so I'm actually not going to introduce them. I'm going to let each of them share just a brief introduction about themselves, their company, and then we'll get started with the really live Q&A. So I've got questions, but we're really hoping that all of you have questions for these guys. There's really plenty to learn from these guys. All right, so let's start out with Anna. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. I guess you ordered these ladies first, I guess. And you can never get it with women, right? Because we don't want to go first when we need to be as speakers. But if we don't go first, why didn't he say ladies first? So. So I appreciate the order and that you reorganized us. I already told Kevin I hate him because he has really prepared his kind of a notes to introduce himself. But I decided to change kind of a little bit so I can get into the spirit of this year's theme of transformation, because really in my personal and career life, I've been through a lot of, let's say, chosen positive and forced positive changes. I was fortunate always to be into the positive side, or at least this is how I was taking it. Every challenge was just a positive change for me. And really my transformation starts way back when I was just a daughter, then I became a sister, then I became a friend, then I became a wife, I became a mother. So those are big changes that gives you a special skill set and prepare you for everything in life. And you become like this mama bear. You're ready to rage on the swing sets with your kids. But in your career, this translates maybe at times you have a lot of patience. So when you're dealing with users, we are just saying this is requiring a lot of patience. So my transformation in my career was, it started like in 2011. And then I got the opportunity to join a company as a document control specialist. As Chris just pointed out, this was not one of the things I wanted to do when I grow up at all. And when I accepted the job, I didn't know what am I signing up for, what doc control really means. I had no background. I moved from Bulgaria, my original country, in 2005, and I was a quality engineer for a software company. I have a bachelor degree in computer engineering. So I was thinking, how can I apply this knowledge into a document control specialist role? So I kind of figured it out. You know what? They have all those processes. They're so manual and on paper. Let's try to do something, make a change. And 2 weeks after I started as a document control specialist, I went to the IT department. I said, I'm not a data entry person. I'm not going to scan those files and put them in the system. Forget about it. So he's like, who are you? Where did you came from? I'm like, I think I'll be. I'm like, you know what? By the way, I'm a computer engineer, so I'll switch to a language that's familiar to you, if then else. So this is what I want. And he looks at me again, who are you? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm, by the way, the new doc control specialist and soon to be your worst nightmare. I did become his nightmare because for 9 months we were doing a homegrown solution to manage our part number creation, engineering change orders. Later, I transformed from document control into NPI buyer planner, and I ended up as a senior system integration lead. So all those different roles show me how important it is and to have the document control position. And when they ask you, what does this mean? It means that you're the person that helps to build the bridge between engineering and the rest of your organization. Because it's so impactful, one little change that an engineer can make in the design to impact the unit price of your product, from there your finished good price, not to mention purchase price variances and also sales margins. So it's very impactful. So the engineer also needs to have access to some of the information that we care about, meaning, okay, what's our inventory, what's our cost? And what we are doing now at Letterman Tool Group, we used Adept since November of 2017. Unfortunately, I wasn't there when they did the implementation, and I joined later on in June 2018. It's a big challenge when you're just put in a position that never existed in the company. They just did a fresh new implementation of a new system that they don't know how to use, and they come to you and say, your goal is to gain trust in the system and make it work. Okay, wow, easy, so easy. And for me, where I started was, okay, let's look at your procedures and process, what matters to you, what do you mean by that? So if you're interested to know what it means to be a one-man or one-woman show, that everybody looked at you with the hope, make this system work, please ask those questions, so I'll be happy to answer. And just as a last, I want to say thank you to Marta and Synergis team to having me here today. And if you all plan to come next year, please be brave and come here on stage. It's not that scary.
Thank you, Anna. Wonderful.
Okay. First of all, I can't believe she said she was nervous. She did it fantastic. She did great. So my name's Kevin Mcgill. Work for a company, Neuter Erickson. It's based in St. Louis, Missouri. We have a sister office in Milan, Italy. We provide heat recovery systems for the energy market. So it can be typically designed equipment on the back end of a gas turbine to ultimately produce steam and superheated steam to recycle that in order to make the plants more efficient. But we get into fired boilers and enhanced oil recovery units and a variety of specialty boiler type products. I've had the privilege of Neuter Erickson. That is the only company I've ever worked for. So 24 years, so it's starting to go pretty quick. And I even think about retirement on occasion now. But ultimately, it's provided, a really nice job. It's been a good company. We have been around as an organization for about 35 years. So we've been fortunate enough to be a market leader in our particular area of expertise. So let me also say, we have the kind of uniqueness where our umbrella for our product touches probably 6 or 8 different types of disciplines. We've got about 4 or 5 technical disciplines during the design execution part, but we also do procurement, manufacturing, site construction, field services, and so it really touches a lot of different disciplines. That was a big part of why we wanted to look at a new documentation management system, because ultimately we had 2 groups doing things one way, one group doing it this way, legacy information over here, and we were like, we've got to do something because we're wasting time. We don't know the center of truth on the documents. We got to come up with a more efficient way. So that's how we ended up here. So just to add though, a little bit on the personal side. So I have 3 kids, 13, 11, and 9. It's kind of hard to believe that my oldest is almost into college here in another 4 years. So it is, it's going by real quick. Let's see here. I have a personal love for coaching, so I get into areas of coaching soccer or basketball, or my personal favorite, volleyball. So I just generally adore it. I don't know if my kids like me being the coach, but that's all right, they can deal with it. And then real quickly, I am a big diehard University of Illinois fan. That's where I went to school. So their colors are orange and blue. So usually on the weekend, if you ever see me out and about, I'm usually wearing alumni colors. And then just to finish things off, again, I want to thank Martha and everybody from Synergis. They've been terrific in our 1.5 years of bringing this product to for our company and our baseline use. So thank you very much.
Nice. Thank you, Kevin.
Good job, good job. I'm Randy Nettles. I'm with the Dow Chemical Company. I'm personally based out of the Houston office. Maybe I guess a little, start off with a little personal thing about me. My daughter gave my wife and I our first grandchild about 6 months ago, so talk about transformation, force for the positive. I had no idea how being a grandparent would be, but it's pretty amazing. We live on the Texas coast, so we like to sail. I like to cook, I like to eat. So that's the personal side. My role in Dow Chemical is lead SME and architect for the Adept system for document management. And I was actually traveling in Europe for most of September, so I'm not sure what's on the card. So if I tell you something that's different, yeah, we'll roll with it. So, you know, we started off, I guess, I visited the Synergis offices in 1993, 94, and I think it was NFM back then. Mm-hmm. And so we evaluated the tool, and one of our sites actually implemented it locally. But it wasn't until 2010 that we started looking at it in earnest for the entire company. And so what happened, Dow went through a series of acquisitions, and Roman Haas was one of the acquisitions. So I was actually acquired as part of Roman Haas. So one of the first things that happened was there was an evaluation of what tools are in place between all these acquired companies, and document management was one of them. And it turns out that we had 14 different document management systems at the various sites. Crazy. And it wasn't just instances of the same system, they were all different. Lots of custom developed systems. We had 3 or 4 major document systems in place. But the problem was most of them were out of service. They were out of contract, they were out of support. Some were on VAX systems, and so we were buying hard drives from Craigslist, not even kidding. Like we were struggling for hardware support. And so it was critical that we move off of these failing systems onto some type of common system. And so we spun up a Six Sigma project and evaluated 15 or 20 different document management systems. Narrowed it down to 3. The first one was just prohibitively expensive. It wasn't even a choice. The second one we tried to implement, but after about 5 weeks, they couldn't actually show us working in sight. And so we brought in the Synergis team, and in 3 days, maybe 2.5, it was showing everything that we looked for, everything that was promised. It was so intuitive, it just seemed to work. And the Adept, the Synergis team that came in, we just felt the confidence and the capability in the team. And so that was an easy choice for us. Adept was an easy choice. And so we spent the last 6 or 7 years now, I guess that was 2010, 2011, migrating all of these systems into Adept. And so we're at the point now, even maybe this quarter, we'll migrate our final legacy system into Adept. And I think from Chris's presentation, you could see that we have 8,000 users, something like that. We have several million documents. We actually manage, to use Chris's numbers, we manage $5 billion in IP in our Adept systems. It's pretty crazy. So we're transitioning, our team is transitioning from legacy migration, getting stuff off of existing systems, to forward thinking, pulling documents in from unstructured places. So for example, we have capital project engineering still heavily relying on file shares. So much of their work process relies on moving it from this folder to this folder when it's approved, and from this folder to here when it's something else, right? And then we also have a focus on maintenance. So we make chemicals, so we have chemical plants, and within the plants, there's people that maintain it. They also have file shares that take documents from engineering and move it to a folder, or make copies of it in a different folder. We don't want copies. Copies are bad, right? So you end up redlining and marking up this copy, but then somebody has a copy at their desk or on their folder, they're marking up a different copy, right? So we're attacking the file share based systems within Dell. And then finally, the other thing we're working on is developing a strong taxonomy. You know, because we've acquired companies and we migrated what was there, there's quite a few different categorization methods and structures. And so moving forward, I think we get the best benefit from our systems if we can come up with a common language to use between them all. It's going to take a lot of people change. Those types of things don't come easy, so there's going to be some work. That's kind of what we're working on. I guess, I don't know if I set up my role with our team as lead SME or system architect. So I work with Teresa, looking at the businesses, making the right business direction choices. I work with Chris, making the right technical, sound choices, feasible choices. But we've got a strong team. We've got, he mentioned Jonathan, but we have like 9 or 10 other folks in different regions of the world that also help us. So we definitely don't act alone. All right, I probably said too much.
Nice,
Thank you.
Randy.
Good afternoon. I'm Bill Kovacs. For everyone in here, I think we're officially all on afternoon time in all the time zones that we may have come from. But a little bit about myself first. I'm an electrical professional engineer registered in 7 states in the United States. And I've been working in the cement industry for about 40 years now through different companies and applications. I've been manager, design engineers, project engineers, directors. I've worked for consultant engineers, contractors, process equipment suppliers, distributors. So I've worn a lot of hats over the years. And also I'm involved in the IEEE, if anyone's heard of that. It's the International Electrical Electronics Association, the Industrial Applications Society, Cement Industry Council, whereby I am chair of the National Site Selection Committee and also working chair of the Power Distribution Working Group. And we meet once a year on a global nature to review and see what's new in the cement industry. Personally, I have 3 children and 3 grandchildren, and I enjoy fishing, playing the bagpipes when I get time, and also traveling the country to see my favorite rock band, Kansas. I've seen them about 25 times now. And to those of you who could help me out, vote them into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, please. Thank you. Specific to the company, I'm with Butzi Unichem USA. We are a division of Butzi Unichem Global. We own and operate cement plants throughout the world, about 55 plants in Russia, Europe, North America, Mexico, and in Brazil now through a partnership there. And I'm the director of engineering and construction management, so all capital projects go through me, and I've been the one who has had the fortune and privilege of working with Synergis since about 2005 or 6 to select the Adept tool set for our company and help to structure and grow the document management systems within that. The last thing I'll say before the light turns red, because I'm used to speaking in different other capacities, is our company is not an engineering company, nor is it just a manufacturer of products. So our real focus is to get documents in many different forms and really use it as basically a document depository system. That brings up a different level of challenges than a company who can drive and develop their own standards and drawing number systems. So it's a little bit different than some of the others in this audience, but that creates different sets of challenges for us. Have about 1,200 employees in the US, about 115 of them do have and work with the Adept management system in our operating cement plants, of which we have 8 in this country. So that's it at this time. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Mark Mefford again. Talked a little bit about the work that we've done this morning, but East Kentucky Power Cooperative is the company I've worked with. I've been there 20 years. It is also the only company that I've worked with, so I've seen a lot of change in that 20 years. I remember working on Mylar drawings using an electric eraser, if anybody remembers those. Not as common anymore. I think, are all on CAD now. electricity, that's our commodity. Everybody uses it, unless you're off the grid somewhere. So it's a unique commodity that touches us all in some way, and it makes our lives better. That's a phrase I heard from one of our VPs once, that electric power makes life better. On a personal level, I've seen a lot of change personally in the last 20 years. I met my wife, and I have 2 sons, 2 and 5, that my wife may have accused me of coming here to get away and get some rest. And she might be right. But you heard a little bit about the company's journey this morning. We started this journey in 2018, maybe a few years before that, because we did start our scanning process and looking towards what does document management mean to us in the out years. Our journey is about change, and I embrace change. I think Kristen talked about change this morning. You can be part of the change, or you can be an impediment, and it's really better to be part of it, because then you have a voice, make your voice heard, and yeah, that's what I'm here for.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so let's get this party started. So I've got a few questions. I'll start things off, and then we're just really going to open it for you folks. We've got microphones that'll be running around. Just let us know your name if we don't already know you, if you haven't announced yourself, your company, and then ask away. We won't have time for everybody to answer every question, but we'll try to get 2 or 3 from each question if we can. And who knows, maybe we'll get everybody on a couple of them. So first question, actually would love this for everyone. This is kind of right from the workbook this morning. What is the biggest win that Adept provides to your company? What is that single greatest benefit? Why don't we start with you, Anna, since, ladies first.
Well, another fun fact for me at work, I'm known as the Adept lady. So I guess it just goes with me. That's how the people on the factory floor, if you have questions, go to the Adept lady. So I embrace this nickname. Nice. For us, I think the biggest benefit of having Adept is to have a centralized place for our documents, to have a version control and also capability for revision control on top of our version control. And another thing that we really liked and utilize a lot is the shared work areas. During our projects, and you can know how a project can get very hectic with very variable schedules. You have a schedule, but it changes, and it's not a constant, unfortunately. And we needed to be flexible, and this is what really Adept helps us and gives us this flexibility. And really, we have many, many favorite features.
Awesome.
in it, yeah.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Kevin.
Really just 2 key areas, continuity and alignment. I described it in the introductory remarks that I had. We just have too many departments doing too many different things, and it has just helped bring us together across the entire umbrella of all the disciplines that we have to bring it on. It's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of work. A lot of grinding, a lot of changes. Micah's over there. By the way, Micah's our guru, technical guru. So anyway. It gave us, honestly, the first time to really be all in on bringing together our organization in a level of alignment. So that's the big part. And then just having everything located as a center of truth instead of all the variety of different places. Those are the 2 fundamentals.
Awesome, thank you. How about you, Randy?
Yeah, I'll echo some of what your sentiments were as well. So there's certainly some technical benefits, some hard benefits to having Adept with data extraction and data reuse, and there's just technically there's a lot of benefits. But I was really, I guess, somewhat surprised at the soft benefits that it brought as well. You end up with a common language across all of your sites, and Dow Chemical's a large company, so we have groups in 40, 50 countries, and so it's not just departments, but it's whole cultures that are different. And so I was surprised that suddenly, with one system that people are working from, they're sharing work process information, and they're comparing best practices among the sites. And suddenly a lot of old physical barriers between distance are broken, and we're work sharing with India more. We're work sharing with our German counterparts, our Belgium counterparts, et cetera. So I thought that was an interesting value that it brought, was a common focus for a lot of our engineering practices.
Very cool.
Similar to what you stated.
Mhm. Bill?
For me, it starts with one simple concept. We're in the information age. It allows us to share information. You know, we have, in the United States, 8 unique different plants. In each of those plants, in the old days, everything was a drawing in a flat file. There's only a few people who knew where it was. If they retired, forget it. If something breaks down, no one knew where to go find information on how to find the parts for it or repair it or align it. So it gives us the opportunity to use the search engines to find the documents and share information across the board to make us all efficient and better in our jobs.
Great.
Similar to what some of the other panelists have said, there's a one-stop shop. It's a single repository. Searching is much easier than it used to be. I won't say that we have a crystal ball and we can find everything right away, but it is much easier. And then the other, you could call it a soft benefit as well, is it's really this focus. We're truly putting a large focus on our document control. You know, we've been around for 60, 70 years, and through that, change wasn't controlled well. So this, when Synergis came on, we really have put the effort to dig out of the chaos that we were in.
Great, thank you. All right, so what would you say are the most critical best practices that you've implemented that are really foundational to your success? So feel free, any one of you, if you've got something coming to mind. Go ahead, Bill.
For me, number one is use Adept. Period. Everything comes from that. And the key to that is to find a champion, a good administrative assistant that could help you develop and implement that tool in your organization, or many more than one person, to make it successful. So that's it.
I've got a follow-on question for you, but I'm going to wait. Yeah, go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, so I guess the corollary to what you were saying is maybe don't focus on Adept at all. Bring in your customers early during your implementation. Work on the work process, work on the people, don't focus on the tool. The tool's going to give you what you need, but focus on the people first, and I think you'll win.
Just to add to that, I think one of the biggest attributes that helped us was the fact that we assembled a team with really individuals that were going to champion it from all different disciplines. We also wanted to make sure it wasn't an IS/IT solution, because those in the past just never get accepted in good working order. So we handpicked individuals from different disciplines and engaged them and looked to bring them on. So it's not just advocates of me and my 2 colleagues there, it's a little bit more expanded than that.
Yeah, and that's really kind of my follow-on, is just maybe a little bit more on how did you create that culture to use Adept, to get user buy-in and user adoption? What strategies did you use to develop that?
Let me just,
Go ahead, yeah.
Let me just, because we've had several IS software failures in the past. I'm sure everybody has. So this was what we felt was our one opportunity to really change the game. We had a documentation management system for 20 years and it was stagnant. It wasn't going to be supported anymore. So we had the opportunity to change, but we knew we really had one shot, because if it came out of the gates and it faltered, it would be really difficult to recover from. So we just sat around and we brainstormed on how we could engage the organization.
I would say bring your executive team in, get them on board, and it'll trickle down, hopefully. There's going to be the naysayers, but get some people from every department that can champion with you and really get executive buy-in.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Executive buy-in. How do you go about really getting executive buy-in? What are the best practices for that?
Well, firstly, I would say identify your risks and explain it to them. They're generally open to listening to what the risks to the company and their employees and the bottom line or whatever your metrics are. Put it in a language that they speak. Talk with your vice presidents and your senior management about how you can this tool or this change, this journey can really be better for the company. It's about the company, so explain it that way.
Right. So part of it is thinking about not only my own challenges and how this thing could help me, but you've got to sort of airlift out of that, try to understand your peers, your executives, and the challenges they're facing, and tie this to those types of things. Go ahead, Anna, you were going to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to add for what Mark said, adding speaking the language that your executive team speak. In most of the companies I had experience, the language they speak, it's numbers. So it's like, show them the numbers. And what my biggest key takeaway last year was the ROI spreadsheet that you shared with us and showed us how to quantify the value of Adept. And this really helped when we built to project. Here it's the potential savings that we are going to see the next 3 to 5 years. It's always nice when you have a plan, what you want to accomplish with this system for the next 5 years. And we created another takeaway. It was another customer stories, and they were showing how they created their own Adept roadmap, what they want to accomplish in their organization. So this is something I adopted, and I see it's very helpful to show, here is where we started, on this whiteboard that everything was on paper and it was graphed. ECO for review, ECO in review, ECO done, goes to the pile on the floor. And I'm like, we're now in the information era where you need to have access and fast. Those ECOs need to be processed fast. And just moving something from being fully manual into electronic version, automated workflow, this is where the biggest cost savings come. And I was able to show here now our design engineers do what they're hired to do, to design product and not to create documents and process them. So really the language I've seen
That's
that
great.
speak is
This
the
is some
numbers.
great stuff. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yep.
There's a session at the very end. It's like the last session before the wrap up. It's basically on justifying Adept. So all of you are customers, you've already done that, but how do you really quantify the value of the solution that can help, as you're looking, if you're looking for expansion or more resources or services. So we'll cover that spreadsheet you referred to, which we didn't do on kind of the main stage last year, but we're going to bring that to the stage this year.
If I may, just
Yeah.
one follow comment to what the group of people here said. This morning, there was a common theme that I heard a couple times, training, training, retraining. Well, in many cases, you have to understand your upper management, what their backgrounds are, because you may have to start by training them first, that they truly understand the product, what it does, and what it can provide to the company and to them. So that's part of the success, I believe, across the board. And then we can use all these tools to help show them the dollars or the return on investment in that manner. But it has to start by understanding your own organization, who you report to, who they report to, and what their background may be accordingly.
Well, I'm
I got
loaded.
one more thing too.
Yeah, go ahead, Randy, please.
One of the key things that worked for us implementing various Adept systems is understand your stakeholders early. Understand who's for what you're trying to do, but more importantly, figure out who's against it, who's passionately against it, who's really against it, and then go invite those people in first. Get to know them. Most of the people you work with are really smart people, right? And they've all got a background where they're drawing their perspective from. So find out why they're so negative, because probably there's a story there. And once you get through that, and those people begin to see that you're listening, and they become more open, you might be surprised. You may have your biggest evangelist from that person, because they're typically very outspoken one way or the other. So take the time to listen to your stakeholders and get past that initial frustration.
Anybody have people in your organization resistant to Adept? at all? Yeah? All right. So you've got opportunity there. Great. So how about a question from the crowd? Anybody want to fire one off to the guys and gals? Go ahead, in the back.
I'm Alicia from Nucor in Texas. How do you guys handle obsolete or void drawings that you still want available for the history, but you don't want anybody using them? I mean, what is y'all's solution for that?
I'll take what we do anyway. I don't know if this is a best practice or not, but we certainly have an attribute, a metadata field that gives you the revision status. It could be voided. We also have a supersede because you typically assign a number. You don't reuse the number. If you do away with it, it's superseded by something else. So voided and supersede and obsolete. But then they go in and they put a watermark stamp on the document itself. And it's a lot of manual work. We don't have a great solution for that. Yeah, it's done through the document controllers and, right. Because in the end, if you print a drawing out, it doesn't matter what your document management attribute says. It's sitting on somebody's desk and it looks real, right?
For our organization, we have a dedicated library that is void or superseded drawings. And we physically, when the administrator signs in the documents, the old versions are moved to that area. And honestly, we've never had a problem there because even if everyone has access to it, the last thing they want to do is use an old drawing that they know is not correct. So our focus is to always have all of the latest versions of documents in whatever library folder we call it, whether it be engineer drawings or studies or whatever that component would be, but we do physically archive it into its own dedicated library. And we have tools that we use to do that, which may be another question in the future.
We are still developing this process, but I would, whether you use Adept or not, if you're going to retain CAD drawings that are voided or superseded, you're going to have to do something, in my opinion, physically to the drawing, because somebody's going to get a hold of it and print it, and you're not going to know. So document management system aside, attributes aside, I think you've got to think about the image itself.
Just add one more thing to that. You find obsolete drawings because you're looking at a document, a procedure or something, and it references a drawing number that was printed 15 years ago. So you want them to be able to find that drawing and know that you're not just missing it, it's there, but it's voided for a reason. And maybe if it's superseded, what are the replacement drawings that replaced it? So we do have a superseded field in Adept that when they find that record, it points them to the new place they should go.
Great. How about
Yeah, this is Mike Tasco in Birmingham, Alabama. We all know that our document management solution brings value to our company and maybe to us at a personal level with our jobs. I'm curious to know if you guys have any exciting stories about in your implementation or your transformation within your company where you're gaining real estate, office space, because you're not having to put file cabinets in. One of the things we're doing, we're actually moving our location, and we're designing new office space to be built, and we're not designing file cabinet space in those offices. So just curious if you guys have any successes in that.
We have moved vertical and flat files off-site after they were scanned. I talked this morning about we scanned in the 2009 time frame. We moved a lot of those to a cave in Kentucky. So for disaster recovery, they are preserved in a very large cave. You could drive a tractor trailer through it. But so we are looking at that as a potential office space use because, if your management is going to ask before building another building if there's a place to put them otherwise.
Great. Any other questions?
I'll add another one to that one too. Is I just visited our Tarragona, Spain site, and they're doing exactly what you're talking about. They're building an engineering building outside of their bounds of their plant. But they have a very large collection of rooms that have binders full of project information, drawing information, legacy archives, stick files with tons of large format paper. And they did not architect a room in their new building for this. And so they're actually on fire to start Adept mainly for that. That's one of the primary drivers is they don't want to bring the paper across and they need a place to put it. Yeah, absolutely.
how do you deal with Jacob Hammond from Board of Water and Light in Lansing, Michigan, but we've got some that still want to maintain the paper files and just can't get past trusting an electronic solution. So how do you deal with that? You know, kind of contrary to that, we're still maintaining flat files.
Yeah.
I believe that's probably going to be a company-by-company decision. In cement, a cement plant takes a large area, so there's physically enough space to keep large files, and we do. We don't throw anything away, but anything brand new is strictly electronic-based only. We do not print or hold or maintain any hard files for anything. It just, we don't need to.
Yeah,
And honestly, we're finding more and more of the plant people don't want to deal with it that way.
Yeah, we've ultimately become the same where nobody wants to keep them. Nobody's looking to have that as our formal storage. Whether we've been fortunate or not, that's just been a natural progression. We just have disaster recovery for our electronic files, both on-site and off, and that's been suitable.
And you might, similar to what I said before about culture, I guess, you might ask, what's their hang up? You know, why do they feel that way? And maybe ask the question, okay, let's not do that. Let's not get rid of the paper, but what would it take to get to a place we could get rid of the paper? And maybe you get to some real answers there.
One of the items that we changed is, I don't know about the individuals out there in the audience, but we have to have ISO certification for our processes. Processes doesn't say that it has to be hand copied, or as long as we write a procedure and then we follow it, that's what we get audited on, and we made that transition to electronic disaster recovery, and that's how we progressed.
I just wanted to suggest, because we do have also documents on paper that I still didn't have a chance to put my hands on, but what I was considering is creating what Adept has, unlinked record. So at least you can keep track of where those paper hard copies are, in which drawer or building, wherever you store them. It's very helpful, again, back to the search, ability to search for them, so you don't end up in front of so many drawers and shoveling papers. At least you can use the unlinked record in Adept to create it, so you know where your files are.
Great point. Yes, we've got a lot of people doing that. I know there's a question back here.
Coming from a little different angle, I'm Dania Gaspar from NASA Glenn in Cleveland. But from your training standpoint, what tools or methods have you found to be the most effective in training your users?
Small groups.
Oh, and team up with Adept so they can
Oh.
provide the training video. That's what I did. I really, when I started, and I was put into the position of being the Adept administrator, and I started, and they started bombarding me with a lot of questions and requests, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm the new kid on the block, I don't know this yet. And I stare at my monitor looking in Adept, and I'm like, I'm smarter than you, I'll figure you out. And then I see this meeting schedule for me to provide training. I'm like, wait a minute, who trains the trainer? So what was really valuable to me was the help in the desktop, and I see that there was a question mark icon added to the web client. Mm-hmm. And this is where I start for all of our new users, give them an overview of the system, point them to the help that it's really helpful. It's the first software I deal with that has such a detailed help, and you can find literally anything that you need to do. And the second, it's Work Like a Pro series. This was really a good resource for me. I'll get the video, and I might play it in my training session, and then clarify how this applies to us and how we use it, and then give them this link so they can watch it later in their own time. So this is really a tool that I use a lot, and of course the customer portal, where we can go to the forum and ask, hey, how do you handle this? I need such and such training to tailor. I've seen those three resources that help a lot.
Wonderful. Go ahead.
The real solution I found is donuts and bagels. Honestly speaking. But once you get beyond that, and humor aside, in our cement industry, we have to do a lot of training, especially on the safety side with MSHA, the Mining Safety and Health Administration, which is a federal organization. So training is not new to our employees, but you have to just focus time, and it's a top-down approach. The plant manager has to be told, this has to happen, this is what's involved, and then everyone follows. So that's what I find in our organizations.
And just to add to that, I do recommend small groups. I also recommend targeting the training to the group. If you've got a group that doesn't care a bit about checking stuff in or workflows, don't train them on it. You're going to lose them. So target your training. And maybe even get a few test subjects in to help you develop the material if you've got some people that can champion with you.
Let me build on that too. Understand who the people are you're training, right? It's less inviting to go through training with the file menu and what it does and the edit menu and what it does. Start with the work process. What is it these people need to do to be successful at their job? Hit that first. Show how easy it is to get in and do what they need to do and get out. And then focus on some of the things that aren't the major part of their jobs. Maybe they need to do a batch update, but they don't need to be trained on that first. Right?
I may also add, in addition to the small groups, you need physical workstations to train. To just go through a PowerPoint, you lose them. It's gone. They have to be able to physically do the task on the screen, or it's not retained.
I would concur. That's probably the biggest difference, is keep the group small, keep the group engaged, have targeted training sessions, and it's a grind. You can't just pull 50 people in a room, go through a general presentation, and then they got it. We also tried to make sure that we didn't have that targeted training until that group was first using the system. Now we got to come back, and we haven't had the time to do it, is to go back and give them a refresher training. So that's the next phase, and people are asking for it. So that's the sign that says we know we need to do it.
Exactly. It's very important to follow up after your initial training that you do. It's very important that you follow up with this group and spend some one-on-one time with them. And even tell them and say, hey, I'm approachable, my calendar is up to date, schedule a block of time when you actually need to do something in Adept, so I can look over your shoulder and guide you through the process. I've seen it that it sticks whatever we give them as guidance when our users have a specific task they need to do in Adept, and we guide them through the process.
Also, you need to understand your organization. With us in the cement industry, we're talking production plants. Mm-hmm. So you may have only a few electricians per shift over 3 shifts. So by default, you may have to find smaller groups, because there's no way you can take everyone in a training session at one time, or your process comes to a shutdown. So you have to understand the makeup of your organization, whatever that may be.
And make sure your trainer takes control of the classroom. That's not the time to debate the implementation or argue how things go. Don't be dismissive with their concerns, because they're probably valid concerns, but don't let it disrupt the training, because nobody will learn anything, right?
Let me just ask on behalf of Synergis, let me ask, what is the 1 or 2 most important things Synergis can do? Because we see user training as really critical and essential. So this was a great discussion and a lot of great ideas. What can Synergis do to help you guys with user training, whether that be remote training classes, more videos, or other ideas that you have? What would be most helpful that we're not doing for you today?
Some people want to go in and learn everything up front. They just absorb it all. They just want it all. Some people just want to go in and do their job and get out. But to have videos that are targeted for certain tasks that you can say, there it is, go look at it. And they can learn that one thing, and they're happy, and now they're off. I think having a library of targeted specific tasks.
Short and concise and simple.
Short, no more than 30 minutes for sure. You're losing them. If you show them something they need to watch for an hour or 2, no, it's not going to happen.
And it's a difficult task, because every company may have some unique changes, different library cards, different library structures. So you have to get back to the real basic functions and keep it short and simple, because their attention span may be short, or they just may not have the time in their job to do it.
Okay, good. I think that's our vision. So I think we're on the right track. We need to get it done, but that's you guys hit the nail on the head for what we were thinking. So we got Don next.
As an administrator, I've kind of been tasked to do a quality check on every single document that gets put into Adept. I've got 500 documents waiting for me to review. Do you guys use specific people at each of your plants to actually control that specific task?
I would recommend that the asset or the subject matter the asset owner or the subject matter expert be involved with the check. I mean, you might be able, I mean, you've probably been there long enough that you could make that decision, but are you ultimately responsible? Who is ultimately responsible for that record? Not the record in the database, but the asset that record represents. And I would get them involved.
I hate to say this, but we don't always have the time to do that function. So by default, what I try to implement is the companies that we hire the services from, engineering firms, process equipment suppliers, give us a detailed Excel spreadsheet of the field data that we can review in advance as a cross-check, as opposed to having everyone always do it 100% of the time within an Adept screen, because we just don't have the resources to do it. You're fortunate yet unfortunate to have to do that task, but it's I don't think there's any best answer. Every organization may have to be different there.
And Don, let me say too that we migrated however many legacy data systems over to Adept. So each one was a project that had to go look at the metadata and the files to bring across. The sites that had a document controller type position, a reviewer type position, had much cleaner metadata, much stronger taxonomy. They could find their files. They didn't recreate drawings as often as the sites that did not. If, for example, if every designer could just push in what they want, when they want, required fields weren't always filled out. They weren't always spelled the same. You just didn't have the same quality. It does come at a cost, but it seems like it's a cost that we recommend to our sites, is that they find a role for that.
And what we did in our company, on our workflow, we added a peer review step. So we have engineers to check their work and to verify. There are people who can verify the content of the print and then the metadata on the data card that's captured. And the next step on the approval, the reviewers are also responsible to check on the how accurate the information is before it gets fully approved, sent for implementation, and in the library. So we put it on the owners of the, really on the documents.
Yeah, we don't have, for us, we don't have it on the site side. We're on the supply side, the design side. So just like you said, we make that subject matter expert part of the workflow. They're responsible. We have a formal document that we've created outside of the system to know who the owner is. And that's what we've worked on as an organization when I described earlier on alignment and continuity. So that was the biggest part of our effort to get to a baseline, is having those levels of discussions with all those disciplines.
Great, thanks. And then over here.
Lori Bowman from Evoca Water Technologies. I have a question, but I also have a comment to the training. Yes. What we did was we started creating the task-by-task training videos customized to our system, so we would show how our system works. But then we pulled together a consumer training and an editor training because we were getting requests for people that couldn't attend the meetings to actually be able to go and look at a video. So we did start doing that on our own.
Nice.
So
great. Yep.
It is helpful. But my questions are, first, as a group, do you have multiple data cards for different groups within your companies, or are you using a single data card?
We have multiple.
Do you?
Yes, we do. And the way we organized even the Adept library was to create a library folder, let's say, and we created for engineering, for marketing, for quality. And that's how we did our data cards, to have engineering dedicated, quality, marketing, and from there we created the same column sets. So depending of their what type of documents in which library they're looking, they can change their column set so they can see the information they need right away. Otherwise, they say, I search, it's not there. Why those fields are blank? What's going on? And that's how we kind of linked it, so it's kind of logically following, and it's easy for them to use and navigate.
We did the same thing with our key disciplines. We have a specific data card that matches in. We brought them in. They're the subject matter experts. We said, what kind of metadata do you want to see? What kind of data do you want to search on? So we've crafted different data cards to match the preferences or the beliefs of those groups on what they can best get out of the system.
And I guess
I was just going to say, for us, it was kind of easy because with all of our acquisitions, we basically ended up with a card for each heritage site we brought across. Union Carbide, Roman Haas, Dow Corning, et cetera. So we basically had one card, but for each company that was brought in.
Gotcha. And then, is anybody using templates other than transmittal template?
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Yes. That was big for us. We found a way because, like, when I started at Leatherman, it was looked at Adept as engineering document management system. And I keep saying, no, it's not just for engineering. We can use it, we can benefit, and this is how we can show way more value of the company. And the first team that I brought besides engineering was quality, because we were trying to build a quality management system. It's a huge change which will take a long time to do, to go from the tribal knowledge, and we always did it that way, to a process-driven company, and it's a big challenge. But this was something that was easy to show that we can use and automate processes. We imported a lots of templates. I lost count, and plus doing approval workflows that goes with the template and the library.
Everybody else using templates, or just quick yes or no?
Yeah, no. I think it's an area that we could grow in. I think there's a use for it. We haven't done it yet.
Okay, awesome. Right here.
James Tone with Diversified. My question might be to Anna, but maybe to the entire group. With non-technical documents like you were talking about, are you challenged by other platforms that are already there and are competing with those, or is it an easy adoption? You know, we're working in parallel with Teams and OneDrives and everything cloud-based out there, and we're wondering where the right fit is somewhere.
Yeah, this is something that it was probably the first thing I did was like 2 slides that I showed during my training. It was our systems, what systems we have in the organizations and how they're linked to each other, either by automation and integration, or it's a manual. Somebody has a task to put information from one system to the other. And the next one that I created was to show the OneDrive, SharePoint, and Adept next to each other, how we use those for document management perspective, and that OneDrive is something that you use, let's say, for your personal documents, something that you share with HR, or something that you want to share with some of your coworkers, that it's not a process and product documentation. We were very specific about this, and this takes us a little bit of time to stress how important it is to use Adept for storing process and product documentation, quality documentation, because the first thing we want is to protect our IP. This is where I start, and I start with also, we have a very detailed audit trail that tells me who viewed the file, who shared the file, who copied the file, who printed the file. And I go and they're like scared, how did you know I did that? I'm like, hey, I have the all-seeing eye here. But it's really helpful if you can create a visual and you use this to show the difference between your systems. And we are also looking forward for a potential integration between SharePoint and Adept, because all of our computer users have access to Adept, but for whatever reason, they're just resistant to use it yet, and they prefer maybe the graphic design of SharePoint. I don't know, they feel it's easy to use. That's why we're looking for potential integration even with SharePoint and Adept to make it easy for the non-informed users to still use Adept.
But ultimately, what you're asking is for sure a real problem, okay? You can have as many people as you want be all on board with Adept, and we have that for our project execution. But now we have an ERP, which we use Microsoft Navision, okay? But they want to store their documents there. So it is. It's a level of organizational struggle to get everybody on the same page to say, hey, not only should Adept, if it's a document, content management, let Adept control it. You know, it's ultimately, maybe that gets into executive level buy-in. I'm not sure. Maybe we haven't quite gotten that ourselves, but no doubt, I think it's for sure an area that we will be better off if we can get to a level of alignment, but it is a natural struggle.
And I think it would help if you start with a charter and a purpose and make sure you have a clear vision of the scope of what's supposed to be in there. Because it's not always the answer that it should belong in Adept. It may belong somewhere else. So you need to make sure you have a clear lane that you stay within, right? Because sometimes we get in the habit of saying, document, yeah, it goes here, but maybe it doesn't, right?
Yeah, I have a question for Kevin. I saw in your little bio that you had like 80-some workflows. We have quite a few growing ourselves, and I'm sorry, Mark, they have a lot of steps, a lot of them do. How do you manage those?
Well,
my users are
Let's
getting
pass
confused.
this question
and
of
it's-
workflow.
It's hard for them to find the ones that they need.
it is where we have spent the most time, both in library construction, even though I've described we have 82 workflows, we've actually changed that up. We actually, after our first project live, we changed our library structure as a level of that initial feedback coming in. So we are in, I don't even really want to say how many libraries we have, but we have lots of libraries and lots of workflows, because we have a workflow where electrical engineer touches some of the valves. They don't touch manual valves. So we created a distinct workflow for that. We have spent considerable time with the department heads walking through what libraries we want, what document types we want, who's assigned to a workflow, who's a document owner. But it was necessary because now everybody is on board with using the system because they were the ones that constructed it. So now, at least now moving forward, I'd like to believe that since they were part of it, to build on it, they won't want to start navigating and adjusting things, but we're going to track basically that entire system as a formal document. And if somebody wants to make a change, they have to put in the request to make a change. Hope that helped.
Let me interject a question. Oh, go ahead, Ray.
I was just going to, a different perspective with our capital project system, where we manage supplier document control, the documents coming back and forth. We have hundreds of workflows, maybe even 1,500 workflows. Because what we did was applied it towards each equipment order that goes out. Before that, all of the team, regardless of your discipline, would be flooded with emails from every other discipline. And so by tailoring the workflow to the specific equipment order, we can reduce by thousands of emails what they get notified for. And their inbox looks appropriate, and their assignments look appropriate. So it's a ton of workflows, and it is work for the project admin, but that was a key benefit that we got from using Adept in capital project work.
So I would have to just add on to that. That's well said. I mean, it is work up front, but wow, does it simplify the process. Okay, yes, you are going to have to manage it and coordinate it, but now only those that need to touch it are touching it.
So I believe 4 of 5 of you are using PublishWave. Can you just briefly summarize the use case? What do you use PublishWave for?
So we have PublishWave. We haven't dove deep into using it. The vision that I had was that we would take large sets of documents, maybe if there's a project going on, and just push those out for production. The vision is still there, but our focus is on data.
Yep. Anyone else?
We use it really to convert our SolidWorks prints into PDFs right now on final approval on a workflow, and it gets to like a specific library where our commodity specialist can use those files to share outside of our organizations because we don't want them to share native files. So that's how we use Adept and publish to Adept, which is really a good tool because our engineers say, engineer me out of this. I don't want to manually create PDFs. So this was our first step, and we're looking to utilize the tool more. Yes, a lot of potential there. Yeah.
For us, it's a similar situation. We've recently been working with Synergis to do some updates to our system and reconfigure it. We wanted to start looking at using PublishWave for the PDF generation capability, but secondarily, we were trying to find ways to reach out to our third-party engineering companies in sharing and exchanging information without them getting through our firewalls. So we're still modifying that with our IT department, and we may have some other ways around that, but it's still an evolutionary tool for us.
And I want to add that my dream for PublishWave will be to be able to create step files. This will be huge. If PublishWave can create a step file along with the PDF, will be just something really helpful.
We started using PublishWave with the MET work that Chris mentioned during his presentation. It's Dow's most effective technology, which is basically what's the torque spec when you have this flange with this material around it. It's how to build a plant, right? So it's Dow's way to build a plant. Well, they license that as a product to other companies. And so one of the key usage is as they sign in a new version of an MET practice, PDF files get created, one without designer notes and one with Dow's internal designer notes. And so those are the products. It's not the original Word or drawing, it's the PDF files that are the product. But I tell you, the hidden gem for us with PublishWave was Publish to Adept, because we're finding creative ways to use Publish to Adept. Chris, in his presentation, mentioned if you extract too many fields, it slows down. If you extract thumbnails, it slows down. We can streamline some of our work processes by allowing our users to drop documents into a folder that have pre-purposed metadata that get put in automatically without an interface at all. So, for example, one of our visions is for our inspectors in our plants carrying these handheld computers that has a camera, and they put in their job number and it creates a P to A configuration file, and then they walk around snapping pictures, filling out reports, and their library in Adept is being filled out as they walk around the plant. Right? So PublishWave is great, and Publish to Adept is another nice tool.
Very cool. Nice. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Ryan?
Ryan Manjo from Space Age Electronics. I kind of have a question for, now, most of you guys, you've had your systems up and running now for a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and even longer, Randy. I'm curious what you guys are doing getting user feedback. Now, it's not necessarily waiting for somebody to come and say, hey, I have a problem. Hey, this frustrates me. Are you actively going and talking to people to see what their pain points are? Because, not everybody is completely satisfied 100% of the time. Sure. So I'm kind of curious how you're tackling that.
We've started going on site. We found that if you don't ask them, they don't come to you. They'll just let it fester, or maybe it's not even that bad, but there's a room for improvement. So I think, I go up to one of our northern plants once every week or two and hold just a general open office hours for people to come by. And I'm probably going to roll that out to all of our bigger locations.
I agree with that approach because I go to plants, and until I ask the question, I'm not going to get feedback. And then I have to learn to ask the right question. That is so important because they may have very good ideas, things they wanted to do, but they may not offer it because they're not sure that you are giving them that opportunity.
And really, it is how do you filter and from their complaints as users and saying, I don't want to use this system, to, okay, what's your constructive feedback? And asking the right questions. I was even creating some sort of a survey to ask, hey, how do you use the system? What do you like? What you want to see? And always follow up with them. I'm very often like a guest into the staff meetings where I go and ask, hey, we've been using Adept. We make those changes. What do you think about it? And my other approach now is creating power users. Those my ambassadors for Adept, which now I brought 2 of my coworkers with me. One is the drafter, and the other is from manufacturing engineering, because they're the heavy users. And I hear lots of complaints, and it doesn't work, but they are not specific. What do you want to do? And I keep saying there are opportunities to do it better. And our biggest benefit, if you wish, having Adept, it's that Synergis Adept team is such a great partner. And having a partner is the most important thing when you select your software. Somebody that's willing to listen to you, to actually get your ideas, to implement your ideas. And that's why I say, the sky's the limit. We can do and accomplish so many things, but we need and depend on your feedback. Keep giving it to us, otherwise we cannot make improvements.
Wonderful.
I
Thank
just
you.
got back from visiting our European sites, and I got great feedback one-on-one for those people. So I agree that in-person meetings are the best, but you can't always visit all of your sites. And so Jonathan Mullins on our team manages our surveys, and he uses SurveyMonkey, I think so. And so he regularly sends out surveys to our users. And there's like some of you said, there's a bit of an art to sending out a survey because you'll end up with a bunch of blank spaces not filled out.
Or
and so,
something else that you don't want to read.
So yes, no answers. Yeah, you'll get feedback, but maybe get some idea of the degree that they feel good or bad about something and what they use. You want something that's going to be able to be actionable for you, elicit feedback that you can then look at and say, there's a cluster of people here that are having some minor issue we should go follow up on. So it's a bit of reading tea leaves, but I think the surveys can be useful.
And also I want to recommend, if you're having a challenge to get a feedback from your team, and you can figure out key people from each department that struggle using Adept, set up a meeting with the Synergis account representative or someone that can help you, because they can ask the right questions. And when you have somebody like from the outside coming with fresh eyes, somebody who is not using the system daily in your organization, really helps to help you even figure out those right questions and navigate, say, wait a minute, we can do this. This is how you can overcome your problems. So those are very valuable sessions too.
But the term power users were used, and we're still in the process of developing that. Instead of it all just going to one or two people that are admin types, you really got another group who can be advocates for the system, plus they're within those departments. So, it's sometimes easier if the questions are coming from them because they're working within those departments instead of us trying to go down and tap into it. So, yeah.
Let's take a question back here. Go ahead.
Hi, Justin Heino with Wolf Point Engineers and Contractors. For projects where you're using subcontract designers or engineers and they're actually creating drawings on your behalf for your projects, how do you get those kinds of new design files into the system? Do they actually have access somehow into the database, or do you have to manually kind of take whatever they send via FTP, Dropbox, or email and input it yourselves, or anything else?
For us, it's been another part of our big effort, because with us manufacturing, that supply coordination is a big deal on whether we succeed or not. So we chose not to have the suppliers access the system now. We always are going to leave that out as a target in the future. But this is where I've got a guru, Micah. Yeah, this is the second time I get to call him a guru. We've created an Excel template file. So it's going into our contractual requirements to the supplier. Here's the file and here's the way you need to fill it out. And this is where we're expecting it to come back in. We've created a SharePoint FTP site. That's where the information is put. That's where they get it. That's where they send it back. We read it into Adept automatically as long as they can follow and use the format within the Excel template file. We can read it all into Adept pretty seamlessly. So that's just some of the things that we've done.
And has that worked for you guys? Do you typically get the right information back? And if you don't, do you really push back, or do you take it anyway?
We're doing a little bit of both. So you're absolutely right. I'm not going to sit here and say just because we created it, that's how we're getting it in. So we've created flexibility, knowing that we will push back, but at the same time, we're not going to have the project create risk because we're asking somebody to submit it in a certain way. Right. So we do have to make manual adjustments and those types of executions around it. But it's a work in process for them. Yep. Some of our suppliers have never been asked to do it in a certain way. I'll admit there are some suppliers that will say we're not doing it that way. So it's going to be a little bit of balancing.
We do have one site that when they get a CAD file back, they insert what they call a dumb block, and that's an extractable version of our title block, basically. So even though the contractor didn't fill out a compatible title block, they add one, so then it goes into Adept from then on.
Scott, Bill?
Yeah, we're implementing similar systems using FTP site, and we're either going to put multiple folders in there or have a unique FTP site per project. This way, everything goes there. It's unique. When it goes to a common shared folder inside, our document control managers can then decide how to best implement that and filter it into the appropriate libraries of Adept. Because remember, we're different plants, different projects, and our challenges are many of our consultants or equipment suppliers that we hire, we can give them our spec standards and requirements, but it doesn't guarantee that they're always going to follow it, especially when a corporate office in Europe tells us to use a particular supplier and they don't enforce those issues on that company. So it's a challenge. There's no 100% foolproof way, but we're trying to manage it the best we can.
Okay. So 4 of the 5 of you are using Adept's web clients, I believe. Can you just share a little bit about the roles of people who are using the web client, and specifically if you're using Creator, what types of roles are using Creator?
So we have all 3 web clients, and Creator, we bought very few licenses of just really for our administrators. It was something we wanted to try. I personally like it, but I'm not doing a lot of creating. So it's a vision for the future. Explorer is the one we have the most seats of, and we went down that path with the idea that the user that just wants to find what they're looking for doesn't need to interact with the software in many other ways, that would be the best tool for them. What we found, though, is that people like Windows-based softwares. I don't have a preference either way. I'll use either one, especially as we get more administrative functions in the Creator. But people have leaned towards the desktop client. And so we heard that, and we install it on every computer now instead of just a select few. And then if they want to gravitate towards one or the other, it's there.
What we did in our company, we use the Explorer and the Reviewer right now. We are looking forward for the Creator. We are waiting patiently, or try to be patient, for the 2019. And I want to say, wow, you did a great job. But the way we approach that, all of our computer users have access to the Explorer because we want everybody to have view-only access to the system. All of our machine operators on the factory floor are having computer stations where they look up prints. We want to go paperless as much as we can. If we see the audit trail that somebody printed a document, we go downstairs immediately and to retrieve the hard copy and say, the moment you print this, it became obsolete because we might be doing a change or a red line layer. So this is how we want our, and kind of are very, very strict about this, that on the production floor, they use Adept to access prints. So everybody has access to the Explorer. And the Reviewer will be the non-CAD users. And we are looking for the Creator because we want to move our quality department to start using the Creator because they're dealing mostly with Office documents. We did ended up same thing, kind of to install the desktop client to every machine, but users preferred had the feel and the click and the right-click menu and kind of just the user interface. And it was so hard to tell them to switch to the Reviewer, so I needed to do a drastic measure, uninstall it, and say, I need you to use the Reviewer. Because of your role, you're just participating in a workflow, you're not even creating documents. So I cannot justify why would you use an expensive license and then I cannot have my design engineer log into their job. So it's really challenging at times to balance out the use between the licenses, for sure.
Yeah, we prefer the web client. We have 8,000 to 10,000 people. We prefer the web client. Upgrades are a pain, right, Chris? Yeah. And so we definitely use Adept Explorer. Adept Review, our as-built system, where the primary bulk of our users are, doesn't have a lot of workflow. Our capital project system does, and I think we could move more of those folks to Adept Review. The Creator, we're kind of a little bit self-limited there because we are using a 1995 version of MicroStation that nobody ever supports, and so we have a custom plugin that gives us that support. So it's going to be a little more difficult for us to move to Creator. There's some features that we need yet in Creator, but certainly Explorer, and then I think we have some room to move some folks to Reviewer, soon.
Okay, great. All right. Anybody else? Questions in the audience? Right. There we go. Yep.
Melissa Hazelwood, Nova Scotia Power. I just want to take a step or two back. Publish Wave. Yeah. Does anybody up on the council there, did they actually take a CAD drawing, push it off to a PDF, and upload it to a SharePoint site that has the metadata from Adept go over to the SharePoint site?
We do not.
No.
Anybody in the audience doing something like that? Micah?
We don't use Publish Wave, but we wrote a tool that takes the title block data and writes that as form fields to a PDF, and then we hide those form fields and lock them. That way, the next time they put a PDF into a work area, Adept will automatically extract those form fields.
And I was going to say that there's people putting things in SharePoint from files and metadata, and Publish Wave will give you the files and metadata out of Adept, so you could connect those two pieces, and probably the answer would be yes for you, yeah.
Yeah, just as a quick note, there is the option to include an XML file, an accompanying file that goes with the published document, and that can be read by a lot of other systems, and we do have customers that are doing it through SharePoint or either MRP, ERP systems.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing else from the crowd? So we've got just a few minutes left. Go ahead, Randy.
Just one quick point. I just wanted to remind everybody that we're just you guys sitting up here, right? So nothing special. So ask these same questions when you're hanging around during dinner or during breakfast, because it's the same thing. We just happen to be up on stage right now, right?
That's a great point. Yeah. Thank you, Randy. So how have you guys, do you have any good stories of how you have used Adept to break down barriers or silos within your company?
I can share one. Again, this is going back to the cement plant and ongoing operations. Our plant manager walked out into the plant one day, and there were 5 maintenance people trying to fix a bucket elevator, which is a tall structure with steel buckets that lifts material. So he looks at the technicians and he says, "Do you know what you're doing?" "Yes." "No problem." So he says, "Well, where's the manual?" "We don't need a manual." So he says, "Where's the procedure on how to align what it is you're doing?" "Oh, we don't know that. We don't have that. We know what we're doing." So the plant manager himself goes back in, goes into Adept, gets the manual, gets the document sheet, walks out and observes what they're doing. And when they went to start this piece of equipment, it's going crooked. He hands him this piece of paper and yells at him in so many words. Within half an hour, the thing was working perfect. So he got the word out to everyone: you will go into Adept, you will get the manuals, you will follow the manufacturer's procedures. This is what we do.
Nice. Awesome.
Period.
Love it. Anyone else?
For us, really, it was the shared work areas. This is really that establishing shared work areas where you have input from product, like non-engineers and engineers to collaborate, work together during the project was a big break of the silos. Otherwise, it was engineering creating something, dump it on a workflow for approval. Product manager sees it. That's not what we discuss, and back and forth. And as we said, okay, what we can do to provide you a better way to collaborate, it's creating shared work areas. So we have more than 50 shared work areas at the moment. It's very being helpful for us.
Nice. Thank you.
And I think for us, there's some natural silos that develop procedurally and also over the years. And through the engineering design process, through issue for construction, through plant startup and handover to operations, having all of those stages in one system and all of the disciplines across the project in one place allows you to pick up the phone or send a link or email a link saying, here, it's in Adept. You know the status. You can see the status. You don't have to guess. You also don't have to keep your own copy in your own desktop folder, right? Yeah.
Question over here.
Yeah, I had a follow-up question to kind of Bill's point that he was making before. Are you using this system with like tablets in order to allow, like, say, maintenance guys to pull that information up or drawings up in the field?
We are not yet, but that's the next progression. We are heavily in the final throes of evaluating the web client versions to give them field accessibility to the documents. I want to take it one step further, and that is, in an operating plant, we have large amounts of control systems, HMI, computer screens, process flow diagrams. I want to get to the point where any operator or maintenance supervisor can go to that screen, look at that piece of equipment, click on it, and then all the appropriate documents from Adept that are part of that asset number are linked and brought together right for them to use at that point in time. So it's a progression. It's a progression.
Thank you.
And I think the question, we looked at tough books, we looked at tablets, we looked at iPads, and we've had some success running Adept on those platforms. So it's not a question as much, can you do it? It's should you do it? So the idea of walking around with a mobile drawing seems really cool until you've got gloves on and you're walking around and you're trying to zoom in to see the piece of text you're trying to read. So the interface has to be right for a mobile workforce, and the documents have to be right for a mobile workforce. And like you said, there may be some packaging, like you're not looking for one document, you're looking for the package of documents to do your job. So I don't know that the Adept interface right now gives you that mobile experience that we ultimately need for maintenance, at least for Dow Chemical. But certainly I think driving towards a web-driven interface is going to help. And then having a design around purposely walking around mobile, I think needs to occur.
And in a follow-up to that, again, you have to look at each application or situation. Again, in an industrial plant, many times they may not have a signal strength to get something right to the tablet. So they may have to get it in an office and walk out with something. Or because of safety, it becomes too dangerous to literally, believe it or not, have a tablet or something like that near your work. So there's other dynamics that have to be considered. I think it's a case-by-case basis.
I wanted to go back to the last question
ahead,
on silos. Bit of a nuanced answer, but I think what we found is a lot of the younger engineers, the newer generation, has really liked the software system. What we had to do in the past, we had to get a engineering design ready for release. We would give it to a dock control person and they would release it into the system. Well, now they get to be the owner. They get to put it in the system and it starts workflow. So it's, I think for them, they feel a higher level of ownership with the software than some of our more outdated processes.
Great.
They simply grew up texting.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
Literally,
Exactly.
it's
They're
their,
like,
it's their communication.
Why should I give it to this person when I can easily do it myself?
Well, we have a last question for the session over here. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Leslie Follows. I'm from Plasco Conversion Technologies in Ottawa. I'm just curious, do any of you guys use the bill of materials, the BOM function in Adept? And if so, do you use the Synergis relationships or do you just use the SolidWorks one? Just curious.
Not yet, but this is in my plan for next year. So I was researching the use of it and the plugin for the bill of material. So I'm taking the class now, how to get advantage of the plugins, which is Wednesday or Thursday. So it's I'm hoping to take away a lot of good input on it. That's kind of the thing for next year for us.
Okay. Oh, we got one more. All right, one last. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Kevin, you can sit this one out, please. We're not. But are any of you using the Outlook to Adept feature? We're concerned with duplicating the storage of emails in Adept that our Exchange server would back up itself. And if you do use it, what kind of
system do you have in place to make sure that the emails you're storing are meaningful to a project?
I can respond to that in this manner. We no longer put emails into Adept because of the volume of what we're doing. When we have a large capital project, we create a unique email account specific to that project. Everything goes in and through that, and then we literally manage it and archive it through the email exchange system. And I only say that because we don't have the staff to manage that many more documents or electronic file exchanges. It doesn't mean it's not possible or feasible, we just don't do it that way.
And we've tested it, but it's not part of our work process today. That's an area we're looking at in general, is what project documentation should be in Adept, what should get archived and what should get tossed. And I think that's an in-depth topic you have to look at is, you know, getting the emails into Adept is one thing, but which emails should stay and what other documents should stay? That's the bigger question.
And along those lines, sooner or later, depending on your type of company, you may have to go to legal and actually ask some of those questions, because they will have an opinion as well.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay, great. Anna, Kevin, Randy, Bill, Mark, thank you guys so much. This has been awesome. These guys are superheroes, not only for what you've done in your companies, the innovations you brought to your companies, but also for coming out and being willing to be up on stage and sharing your experience with everyone else. Please join me with a big round of applause for these guys.